We are getting new details in the shooting death of a young mother in Chicago. Prosecutors say the woman accused of killing her did not know her before that encounter.
We're also learning the accused had filed an order of protection months earlier that was never served. Tia Ewing is here with the other key points we've learned from court today.
I mean, so many key points in this case. And you mentioned her saying that she didn't know her. She said she had never laid eyes on her before until this shooting. And we know she is the alleged shooter in this case. Let's run it down for you. Prosecutors are revealing new details about the shooting that left Romeca-Blackmon dead. They say the accused shooter, Quadajah Johnson, had never met Blackmon in person, even though she filed an unserved order of protection against her last December, claiming threats through family members. Blackmon's mother is now left raising her 7-year-old grandson.
I just want justice for my daughter, and I want peace in my family. This has been such a hard 3 months. It's been painful. It's been terrible. I mean, we've been torn apart. One of the leaders of our family, she was the baby, but she was the leader. The holidays are not holidays. I'm just grateful to God.
Well, let's walk through this. So on September 8th, investigators say Johnson and the father of her child were near his home. They drove Johnson to 20 West Romeca, where her car was parked. They placed their 6-month-old into Johnson's car in the back seat. Around the same time, Blackmon had just dropped off her son at a nearby school and drove back to the area where Johnson and the father were. Witnesses told police the women argued. They reported the father pushing Johnson away and Blackmon standing with her arms crossed. They say he then slammed a car door on Blackmon and also put her in a chokehold. Prosecutors say Johnson broke free, and that is when, or I should say Blackmon broke free, and that is when Blackmon was shot once. And then that's when they say Johnson paused, then fired 2 more times. Police recovered 3 9mm casings there at that scene. Johnson legally owned the gun and claimed self-defense. Prosecutors say Blackmon was unarmed. Her son turned 7 days after the shooting and is still asking to this very day, where is his mother?
Carlos may be hurt for the rest of his life, but we make sure he see rainbows in his clouds. Amen. Okay? Nothing will ever change about that. There is nothing he needs that we cannot provide. He is perfectly well. He is happy. He is thriving. And even when he feels his lowest, we pull him out of it together like we do with each other. He a superstar like his mom, and he's going to show her better than he can tell her.
Now, Johnson's lawyers did argue that she's 7 weeks pregnant and should be released from custody. The judge didn't see it that way. She remains in custody even right now. Johnson's next court appearance is scheduled to happen December 23rd. This is a story that we've watched closely, a lot of national reaction to it, and of course we'll continue to follow it.
Yeah, and a lot of new details we learned today. Have we heard at all from the father?
In fact, I just received a FaceTime call from the father. He says a lot of what the witnesses are reporting that we're hearing from the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, he's saying that the details did not play out that way. He's asking questions about, are they sure they saw this? What is making them say that he put her in a chokehold? All of these things. So he's saying the narrative didn't play out quite like what we're hearing and what we heard in court today. So this is one that we will be following, and of course we're going to try to make sure that we get his side of things as well.
I'm licensed to carry.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, bitch.
You shot somebody, nigga. What the fuck wrong with you?
For the first time, we are hearing from the father at the center of a fatal confrontation.
Carlos Smith shared children with 2 women, and now one of them is charged with murdering the other.
Tia Ewing has been following the story from the very beginning, and she has the latest.
A lot of details came out in court today for the hearing of Quadajah Johnson, including the fact that this was the first time when the shooting unfolded that she allegedly laid eyes on Romeca-Blackmon. We know that she and Romeca-Blackmon, they both have children by the same man. And for the very first time, we are hearing from Carlos Smith. He was the man on the scene when this tragic shooting unfolded. So a lot of information came out in court today. Witnesses saying what they saw, but you were there. What's your reaction to what you heard came out in court today?
When I heard it, I'm just looking, you know, it was unbelievable, but I was there. And I know for a fact none of that happened, how they just explained it. But my truth will get out here, and I hope everybody understand. That's really it. I can't even say too much right now, you know, because it's just gonna feel like I'm going against them, they going against me, we just going back and forth. But the truth is going to come out.
Well, let's walk through this. So on September 8th, investigators say Johnson and the father of her child were near his home. They drove Johnson to 20 West Ermac, where her car was parked. They placed their 6-month-old into Johnson's car in the back seat. Around the same time, Blackmon had just dropped off her son at a nearby school and drove back to the area where Johnson and the father were. Witnesses told police the women argued. They reported the father pushing Johnson away and Blackmon standing with her arms crossed. They say he then slammed a car door on Blackmon and also put her in a chokehold. Prosecutors say Johnson broke free, and that is when, or I should say Blackmon broke free, and that is when Blackmon was shot once. And then that's when they say Johnson paused, then fired 2 more times. Police recovered 3 9mm casings there at that scene. Johnson legally owned the gun and claimed self-defense. Prosecutors say Blackmon was unarmed. Her son turned 7 days after the shooting and is still asking to this very day, where is his mother?
Carlos may be hurt for the rest of his life, but we make sure he see rainbows in his clouds. Amen. Okay? Nothing will ever change about that. There is nothing he needs that we cannot provide. He is perfectly well. He is happy. He is thriving. And even when he feels his lowest, we pull him out of it together like we do with each other. He is a superstar like his mom, and he's going to show her better than he can tell her.
As for Smith, he says he has not seen his son since the shooting unfolded, the son that he has with Romeca-Blackmon. We did learn today that Quadajah Johnson is 7 weeks pregnant. She did ask for leniency from the court, hoping that she would be able to attend her trial going back and forth from home. We do know the judge did not allow that. As for her, she will be back in a courtroom come December 23rd. From the Greater Grand Crossing neighborhood, Tia Ewing, Fox Chicago.
The morning air carried a quiet calm as parents lined up outside the school, guiding their children through the familiar routine of drop-off. Backpacks swung lightly over small shoulders, laughter echoed across the pavement, and for a moment, everything felt ordinary. Among them was Romeca Meeks-Blackmon, focused on her child, stepping into the day with no sign of the tragedy that was about to unfold. Not far away stood Quadajah Johnson, watching, her presence tied to a history that few around could see. The connection between the two women ran deeper than a passing encounter, rooted in shared relationships and tensions that had been building over time. What seemed like an ordinary morning was for them anything but. Their eyes met, and in that instant, the atmosphere shifted. Words were exchanged, sharp, heavy, filled with emotion that had clearly been waiting for release. The distance between them closed, and what started as a verbal confrontation quickly grew more intense. Nearby parents began to notice, their attention drawn away from routine to something far more unsettling. Time seemed to stretch as the argument escalated. There was no clear pause, no moment where things simply stopped. Instead, everything moved forward too quickly. Panic replaced normalcy, and confusion spread through the crowd as people tried to make sense of what was happening. Some stepped back, others froze, unsure of how to react as the situation spiraled beyond control. In a matter of moments, the ordinary turned into chaos. The sounds that followed would stay with witnesses long after the morning ended. And just like that, a day that began like any other would be remembered for something no one expected. As you follow this story, take a second to reflect on how quickly situations can change. And if you're interested in real-life cases like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe, because this is only the beginning of a story that raises difficult questions about conflict, fear, and the consequences of a single moment. The scene that once echoed with children's laughter was now filled with flashing lights and urgent voices as authorities moved quickly to secure the area. What had happened just moments earlier was already being pieced together, not just by investigators, but by shaken witnesses trying to make sense of what they had seen. The normal rhythm of the morning was gone, replaced by confusion, fear, and a growing sense that something irreversible had taken place. At the center of it all was Quadajah Johnson, now in custody, as questions began to surround her actions. Officers worked to gather statements, each account slightly different, shaped by perspective and emotion. Some described a heated argument, voices raised with intensity, while others focused on the sudden shift from confrontation to chaos. Every detail mattered, and yet no single version seemed complete on its own. Attention soon turned to the history between Johnson and Romeca Meeks-Blackmon. Investigators uncovered a connection rooted in personal conflict, one that had reportedly involved past disagreements and tension linked to a shared relationship. This wasn't a random encounter. It was a situation that had been building over time, though no one could say for certain how it would end. As more information surfaced, a new layer of complexity emerged. Johnson claimed she had acted out of fear, insisting that in that moment she believed she was in danger. Her statement introduced a different perspective, one that immediately divided opinions. Was this a calculated act, or a reaction to perceived threat? The answer wasn't clear, and that uncertainty only deepened the mystery surrounding the case. Meanwhile, the loss of Romeca Meeks-Blackmon began to settle heavily over those who knew her. For them, this wasn't about conflicting narratives or legal arguments. It was about a life that had ended far too soon. Their grief stood in stark contrast to the questions unfolding around the investigation. As the case began to gain attention, people from beyond the immediate community started to follow the story, drawn in by its emotional weight and unanswered questions. And as you continue listening, make sure to share this story with others and subscribe, because what comes next will take us deeper into the legal battle where every detail will be challenged and every truth questioned. The courtroom became the next stage where the story would unfold, shifting from chaos and confusion into a structured battle of facts, perspectives, and legal arguments. Every seat held someone invested in the outcome. Family members searching for justice, observers trying to understand the truth, and legal teams preparing to shape the narrative that would define what really happened that morning. At the center sat Quadajah Johnson, now facing the full weight of the charges against her. Prosecutors began laying out their case carefully, focusing on the sequence of events. They argued that what started as a confrontation escalated beyond what was reasonable, emphasizing that the response went too far. Their version painted a picture of control lost, where decisions made in seconds led to permanent consequences. A key point in their argument was the claim that Romeca Meeks-Blackmon was unarmed during the incident. They used this to question whether there was truly an immediate threat that justified such a reaction. Witness testimonies were brought forward, each one adding another layer to the prosecution's narrative. Even as small inconsistencies began to appear under closer examination. The defense, however, pushed back strongly. They focused on Johnson's state of mind, arguing that fear can distort perception in ways that are difficult to measure from the outside. According to them, this was not about intent to harm, but about a split-second decision made under pressure. They highlighted the history between the two women, suggesting that past tensions played a crucial role in how that moment was interpreted. Without clear, definitive footage capturing every second, the case relied heavily on interpretation. What one person saw as aggression, another might see as self-defense. That uncertainty became the heart of the trial, leaving room for doubt, debate, and deeply divided opinions. As the arguments unfolded, the case began to resonate beyond the courtroom, sparking conversations about fear, responsibility, and the fine line between reacting and overreacting. And if you're following closely, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because the deeper this case goes, the more it challenges what we think we know about truth and judgment. The days in court turned into weeks, and the weight of the case only grew heavier with each session. What once seemed like a single moment of chaos was now being stretched, examined, and replayed through testimony and argument. Every detail mattered. Every word carried weight, and the pressure to define that moment became more intense with time. At the center of it all, Quadajah Johnson remained composed, listening as both sides continued to shape the story in different ways. The prosecution leaned deeper into their argument, focusing on consistency and sequence. They worked to establish intent, pointing to the escalation and questioning whether there had been any real attempt to avoid the outcome. Their goal was clear: to show that what happened could have been prevented. On the other side, the defense continued to challenge that narrative, pressing on the idea that perception in a tense moment can be misleading. They argued that fear doesn't follow logic, that decisions made under pressure are rarely perfect. By highlighting past conflicts and alleged threats, they tried to build a picture where hesitation might have felt dangerous, where reacting quickly seemed like the only option. Witnesses returned to the stand, some reaffirming their earlier statements, others clarifying details that had been questioned. Small inconsistencies became focal points, debated back and forth as each side attempted to strengthen its position. Without a complete, undeniable record of the incident, interpretation remained everything. What one version suggested, another could challenge. Beyond the courtroom, conversations continued to grow. People debated not just what happened, but what it meant, about self-defense, about accountability, and about how quickly a situation can spiral beyond control. Meanwhile, the absence of Romeca Meeks-Blackmon was felt deeply by those who knew her, a constant reminder that this case was more than legal arguments. It was about a life that would not return. As the trial moved forward, the tension only increased, building toward a moment where a decision would have to be made. And as you stay with this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because the final chapter will bring everything into focus in a way no one can ignore. As the case moved toward its next decisive moment, the atmosphere inside the courtroom grew heavier than ever. Every argument had been presented, every testimony examined, and now all that remained was the difficult task of drawing conclusions from a situation filled with uncertainty. What began as a brief encounter outside a school had evolved into a complex legal battle, one that forced everyone involved to confront uncomfortable questions about fear, judgment, and consequence. At the center of it all stood Quadajah Johnson, waiting as the legal process edged closer to a turning point. Across from her, the memory of Romeca Meeks-Blackmon remained ever present, carried by loved ones who had followed every step of the proceedings. For them, this was never just about legal definitions or courtroom strategies. It was about loss, about a future that had been taken away in an instant. Both sides held firmly to their positions. The prosecution maintained that the actions taken that morning went beyond what could be justified, emphasizing responsibility and the permanence of the outcome. The defense, on the other hand, continued to center their argument on perception and fear, insisting that in that critical moment, the decision made was driven by a belief of immediate danger. Between those two perspectives lay the question that no one could easily answer. Outside the courtroom, the case had already left its mark. It had sparked conversations about how conflicts escalate, about the weight of past tensions, and about how quickly a single moment can alter multiple lives forever. People followed closely, each forming their own opinions, yet many realizing that the truth was not as simple as it first appeared. In the end, this story becomes more than just a case. It becomes a reminder of how fragile control can be, how powerful emotions are, and how important it is to address conflict before it reaches a breaking point. And if you've stayed with this story from beginning to end, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because stories like this carry lessons that go far beyond the headlines.